This conference will now be recorded.
Of the United States of America and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we have, no one this evening has approached the requesting time before the board to address. So we'll start with the section 2. We have the minutes of November 2nd. We'll ask,
Second.
Peter, Scott, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we passed on that. Minutes of the meeting of November 16th. Again, if I could have a motion unless there's a change.
So moved. Second.
We'll call a motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those minutes are accepted. Thank you, Anita. Next item we have is the Mirror Lake sidewalk, Mirror Lake Drive sidewalk project is essentially finished. There's one change order that we're being asked to authorize this evening. And basically it has to do with
Hello?
Hi, Jason, good evening. It has to do with some extra work that was not covered in the contract bid schedule, approximating $15,000, and some additional materials that were turned over to the village at the end of the project. And so the total change orders are $16,309.53. And that brings the original contract price from $583,809.37 to basically $600,599,872.24. So I would ask for, unless there's questions on this, I would ask for a motion to approve this change order number 1 to the Mirror Lake Drive sidewalk project.
So moved. Second.
Further discussion, questions?
Hey Mindy, how's it looking to get the grant proceeds for the Mirror Lake?
Sorry, are you talking about the DOT grant?
For the Mirror Lake project? Sidewalk project.
That would have been funded via a little, I believe.
We got a portion of it, yeah, we got $100,000, but that was for the park side. The sidewalk grant for around Mirror Lake was the split between us and the town. And that's still hung up in the Senate, as far as I know.
So neither we or the town have, it's still an open item for us that we're looking to receive. Some of those grants have been held up due to the COVID impacts in the state's funding sources.
We can ask Dan Steck when he becomes our senator. Shortly.
Well, the last I talked to Sharon Heder, who essentially is in charge of that department, she said the state's not releasing any funds right now. So even if they push it through the Senate for reapproval because it was backwards when they issued it, we still won't see the money probably until sometime next year.
Tori's number, do you have it? I don't have it.
I can go and get it.
I can,
Scott.
I think I've got it.
You're looking for Tori Hoffman's number?
Yes.
Just 1 second.
Oh, I think Scott just got it.
Four 226, Scott. Thank you. Okay, we're finished on the Mirror Lake Drive sidewalk change. The motion made by Peter and a second by Scott. There's no further discussion on that. We'll call the motion. All in favor of approving the change order?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that passes. Next item we have, it's it's been interesting, but Kimball advised me that due to upgrades or actually work that they've been doing, new work that they've been doing, we used up an inventory of distribution transformers. And he had requested authorization to go out for bid for what looks to be 6-7 replacement transformers. They're all small ones. Although it doesn't necessarily mean much to me, but in any event, I told him we would recognize and authorize that. These are largely replacing inventory that they've used up.
So moved.
Second.
Further questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Next item we have, again, from the electric department is the recommendation from Kimball Davey, as superintendent of the department, indicating that as of November 5th, 2020, department member Jared Hathaway met all qualifications to be moved to a third-class lineman, which is step 2 in the contract. As of November 5th, he's also completed 6 months of service as a third-class lineman, step 1. This promotion has my approval as superintendent, and effective November 5th, I recommend Jarrett be promoted to third-class lineman, step 2, at a pay rate of $25.50 per hour. What this is basically saying is that Jarrett has completed the next step in the lineman training school, and this is all consistent with the collective bargaining agreement for the electric department. I support it and certainly recommend it.
Second.
Scott, Peter. Further discussion or questions on the recommendation? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulate Jared, another young member keeping the department good operation and attending a lot of school. Next item we have is a request to authorize Greg Hayes to participate in a web-based online training program for basically designed for communications training officers. And in Greg's case, he basically we look to Greg for training in the dispatch center, which operates for the benefit of the entire village, but operates out of fire department. You can see the description of the program. It's attached. Total cost, this is over a five-week period of time that he'll be doing it. It will be $439. There is no travel or lodging expense. And the advantages of virtual attendance. Do you have a motion to approve that request?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion, comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank Greg for doing that work. Memorandum received by the supervisor for the town, himself as mayor for the village, from John Hopkinson, who's chair of the zoning board of appeals. Effective, two of the members' terms are due to expire at year end, which will be December 31st. Both members of the zoning board of appeals have expressed an interest in continuing their service on this board for an additional period of time. That being Todd Risberger and Linda Friedlander. And I would add that they appear to have the endorsement of the other 2 ZBA members, plus John Hopkinson's recommendation and support. So I would ask for a motion tonight supporting the reappointment of these 2 individuals to the zoning board of appeals.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We thank them both for extending their term of service. The board doesn't get called to meetings a lot. When they do, it's usually because there's issues that go beyond what the land code provides routinely. Next item we have a new application for a firefighter for our volunteer fire department. The gentleman's name is Tyrone Mullings. He appears is self-employed, but it also appears that he is some work in the area for, I believe, Lamb Lumber Company, and maybe, but he has a strong endorsement of other department members, including George Smith. And I'm happy tonight to recommend approval of this application for membership. It appears that he's been fully vetted by the department, and strong support for his membership in the department.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Jason Hart moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's congratulate Tyrone on his membership in the department and thank him for the service that he'll be providing our community. I think that's encouraging. And finally, we see this each year this time. There's two operators of dog sled rides on Mirror Lake. The first one we saw a couple of meetings ago. The current one is Mike Arnold. Mike Arnold has worked for a number of years and operates on Mirror Lake in front of the Golden Arrow Hotel. To the best of my knowledge, I have no reason to not wish to recommend this. Any comments or complaints that have been registered with the village in the past year?
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
So, second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain.
And Peter abstains. Okay, now all we need is ice. Is there anything else to come up in section 2 under?
Nope, that was all.
That's it? Okay, let's pretty quickly. Under treasurer items, Mindy, is there anything you wish to bring up or comment on before we do the bills?
Just that this warrant housed our New York State retirement bill, which accounts for over $500,000 of the warrant itself. It did go up slightly, but not as much as originally expected, considering how low the market was when they did their evaluation. So I think that's about it.
And as Mindy said, the total of bills presented tonight in the affidavit number 8 of the budget is $1,367,389.70. The biggest single item in there, as Mindy has just commented, is the payment of the New York State retirement system obligation that the village has for its employees. I should comment that typically we pay this when we can in December, and the reason for that is that there's a discount, otherwise it would be due in February. So we take advantage of the discount, which is a modest savings, which all helps the taxpayers. Other than that, the only other major item in there that I saw was the wheeling charge for electricity. But everything else is pretty normal operating charges. I'd be happy to go through the breakdown.
Sidewalk.
That's right, there was $238,000 payment on the road to drive sidewalk. Correct. We've all received the details electronically, and if there's no further questions on the group, I'd ask for a motion authorizing their payment as presented.
Second.
Further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, pay the bills. Okay. Is there anything else to come up under treasurer items? If not, don't appear to have any new items, new business. Unless you gentlemen have something you wish to bring up, or ladies. In that case, then we'll move on to old business. There's not a lot that has occurred since the last meeting, but under Main Street reconstruction, we did note a couple of items that are moving ahead. First of all, there's a pre-working permit meeting being put together between Kubricki Construction, who is the contractor that's been awarded the work for the Main Street project that's starting this spring. And that meeting, I think, will be taking place later in December. The details and location yet to be determined. I think the other thing.
Greg, I think that meeting is scheduled for the 21st at the Kubricki offices in Wilton.
Thank you.
I spoke to Ivan this morning and that's what he mentioned to me.
So I assume some of our people will be attending that meeting.
Yeah, Ivan and Brad, and I suppose anybody else who would like to go.
I would think so. And hopefully that will bring us to the issuance of the work permit for this project so that the contractor can get started. Other than that, I did submit information to the director of Region 1, Pat Barnes, DOT, with respect to the cost of replacing the travel lanes on Main Street, a portion of which DOT has indicated they will contribute to the cost of. His response is he sent that for the dollar consideration, he sent it on to their planning committee. So we'll see where it goes from there. So those are the two primary items that we're following right at the moment. Any other questions on Main Street at the moment?
Janet, do you know if that meeting is going to be remote? Or if there'll be a remote option with Kubricki?
I don't know. I got the impression definitely that Ivan would be there in person. I think Brad is planning on being there in person.
Okay.
And I suspect that, you know, they have to unroll plans and go through everything. I know they're looking for a draft maintenance agreement. Ivan's going to get me some information so I can get that to them, but I won't be going.
Okay. Just curious.
Yep.
If we do get information on that, I certainly would be interested in that as well. And any other trustee that wants more information, maybe. Moving on to other projects, then land use code update. Art, anything new there? Or is it?
As far as land code goes, we haven't had a meeting since my last briefing to you. The only thing the Development Commission would be doing at this point is they've received the applications for the development director, and there were 18 of them, a really good turnout. And there'll be a meeting tomorrow to try to decide on who to interview. And the same thing for the short-term rental update, nothing since our last meeting, we haven't met. And then the local government communications, maybe Anita would be better, but the last I saw in the meeting I attended was that they're still working on pages, and they had some sample pages to be brought before you, and everything that I saw looked really good.
Art, do you know who's going to go through those resumes to sort them out?
Yeah, the meeting tomorrow morning will be with Craig, Peter Rowland.
Or Wednesday.
I'm sorry, that's Wednesday.
Thank you.
There's a selection. Go ahead,
Is
Janet.
Liz Clark involved in that?
No,
I'm
the
saying
direct,
that because it's my opinion, she's the only one with the expertise to look at those.
she's on the land code review board, but she is not on the selection committee for the development director.
Okay, I would just suggest that that's something that you ought to consider because she's the only one that knows the language and what these people might bring to the table. I think it's a mistake not to have her on it.
Okay, I'll pass that along to the chair.
Thank you.
Hey, Art, maybe you know, or Craig, the Vacation Rental Appeals Board, I don't know if that's the title. Did they ever meet? Did they ever have any work yet?
I couldn't understand what you said, Peter.
The Vacation Rental Appeals Board.
I recall seeing one email from Mike Wardelli, who seems to be the, maybe the point person or chair. But that was probably a couple of months ago now, and there hasn't been any, I don't think there's been any activity.
I haven't heard of any.
Peter, I'm not aware of any, and I think some of the early indications for people who were going to be appellants had to do with properties that had traditionally, or at least in the last several years, been doing short-term rentals, but for one reason or another, under the proposed local law, were not going to be able to continue. And I think they came up with a solution to that. So I'm not sure that the appeals board ever did meet.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Well, and the great news would be if the appeals board didn't have to meet.
Yeah, it's true.
Should all be relieved with that. Janet, there's a litigation case. Is that still pending in the courts?
Yeah, I've had no update, and I have spoken to our attorney, and they're just it's at the judge's desk, and it's been there for a while. I'm kind of surprised, actually, we don't have a response, but I know I'll get one as soon as there is a decision. I'll reach out again to see if she's heard anything, but it's all been just sitting on a judge's desk. And I know the courts were open, now they're closed again. So it's not a very efficient system right now. I will follow up.
Thank you, Janet. Anything else come up under old business before we move on to other items? Actually, a fairly short agenda tonight. If not, we'll move under some items under the mayor. First item I have, I just wanted you all have this in your packet. The governor did last week sign the Adirondack Road Salt Reduction Bill, which was significantly recognized Randy Preston, who pushed long and hard as supervisor of the town of Wilmington, and also a former chair of the Essex County Board of the Supervisors. It's a detailed article with a lot of support. I put it in here because Lake Placid, along with Lake George, are each actively participating in salt reduction testing or pilot programs that DOT is running using 8 miles of Route 86 between Wilmington and just west of Lake Placid. And in connection with that, there is a salt reduction task force, if you would, from the area that did meet last week. That task force includes the mayor, includes Brad Hathaway, includes the town highway superintendent, one supervisor. There are some community members on board as well. And the primary chair of the effort is Liz Clark, who is the Placid River Association chairperson. So we also had, for the first time at one of these meetings, I think we had a significant representation in the form of, I think, 2 members attending virtually from DOT, plus there was one DOT representative out of the, I think out of Albany, for our region, who was actually present at the meeting. A lot of the discussion focused on what the DOT is doing, the weather monitoring stations they have on Route 86, allow them to make different judgments on different portions of the road. There was some discussion again about Lake Placid creating a formal salt reduction or salt standard operating procedures plan. That has come up in the past. We have been not inclined to do that. Brad has standards that he operates and has been operating. What we have allowed the installation of monitoring equipment on some of our disbursement trucks, so that whoever's monitoring those can see the amount of the product that we're putting on the road, can also see the condition of the road surfaces, basically some cameras. So we are working with them. In return, we've also received, the town has likewise, what's referred to as a live edge plow, which basically is another way of saying it's a plow that scrapes right down to the road surface. So in effect, we should have less need to apply salt because there's less material left on the road that could be slippery and icy. It's interesting, where I live on Wilmington Road, I watch whenever the weather changes, and with the recent week's changes, we're seeing the effect of this. The state sends the salt truck down through, and certain areas get salted. There's also a second truck that is pure sand with just enough salt to keep it from freezing, I might add. And that is applied to certain sections of the road, and then they measure the road surface conditions with some equipment that if you're driving out there, you can see installed along the roadway, I think in 3 different locations. So just to keep you up to date on that, the major benefit of this, we're doing our part, where we probably have reduced about 30% of the salt. It's difficult to measure how much we didn't use because each winter has a different level of demand for product. So there's 2 factors that are always in play here. One is if we have a mild winter and relatively less requirement for road salt, and we use less. On the other hand, if it's a rugged winter, sometimes the conditions just, where we get a lot of ice, the conditions require more salt. At this point in time, the biggest benefit to this state legislation, the governor's salt, really is intended to focus on all of the Adirondacks. And the bigger problem is road salt that gets into people's drinking water well systems around the park. And I might add probably around the state when they finally get to that point. So there is a benefit to this. Some of the benefits to us are that we have always, on our village streets, we've used primarily a sand mixture with just enough salt to keep the sand from being freezing up, so that we can't use it flat. So that's in contrast to Main Street, which the state maintains, and where generally it's a pure application of salt, although they are reducing the amount as much as they can. We can document that reduction in the sense, though, that where cars are parked along the curbsides, you now see accumulations of snow and ice under the cars that previously, with more application of salt, would not have been there. So it is requiring more effort on the part of the village to keep the curbside parking lanes reasonably safe and free of ice. So that's what I have to update on that. There is an effort underway, and the village is supporting this, but tomorrow evening the town board will consider a resolution addressing the speed limit on the old military road from roughly the Eline Nursing Home and Placid Health Center and Olympic Training Center over a distance that we came to the conclusion probably would extend the Caroline Road. And it's to reduce the speed limit out there from 45 miles an hour, except the school, elementary school is 25. Reduce that to the rest of it to 35 miles an hour. The village has interest in this because of the location of our firehouse and the fact that on any given day, we have traffic coming off from Ricky Hill at 45 miles an hour. But the main problem is it's a hillside with a blind curve and coming down the hill. If we have to enter Old Military Road, and a car is coming down that hill at 45, 50 miles an hour, which is fairly common. There's not a lot of reaction time for our equipment drivers to get out of the way. So for that sake, the department is writing a letter in support of this resolution to go along with it, hoping it's not the first time we've tried to reduce the speed limit out there, understand. But we're hoping that the additional influence of the fire interest here in the sense of traffic safety out there might be working. As an alternative, we've also, Phil and Justin and I also discussed another option, which might be to have flashing light installed beyond, so that approaching traffic to any one of the entrances to the firehouse would see a warning light in time to get them to slow down a little bit. So we'll see what happens with that. But overall, the town was looking at this for the other areas of the street where they felt that there was more traffic, especially the health center region. Traffic at 45, it's still moving pretty quickly. We'll see what happens to that. I think the other thing generally is the Military Road is just generally becoming more busy. What brought it to my attention initially was that there's two different heavy truck depots out there. There was the Boyer property, which I was aware of for a long time. But I didn't realize that Dundas had also stages his equipment there. And a couple of his drivers have said that, again, their driveway comes out on a blind curve and oncoming traffic has no opportunity to see them until they're out of the road, which is dangerous. So we'll keep working on that. Well, there's not a lot we can do other than support the town's efforts. Also, in view of increasing concern about the repeat of last spring with COVID virus affecting the building, the supervisor and I did have a discussion today, this afternoon, relating to the possibility of putting this building back into the same status that it was in back in April, which would be restricted access with essential workers only. The one thing that I did suggest that I noticed bank lobbies are doing that I thought might be helpful would be the ability for someone, if they need to be in the building, to be able to call ahead, make an appointment, do the same. It seems to work for them. But ideally, what we're trying to do is limit the amount of traffic. There are some issues that the supervisor has to deal with. We did speak with Dean Diedrich, who's one of our town court justices, and the Office of Court Administration still requires the courts to be open. Although in response to that, what the court has been doing is that they have been scheduling almost by appointment 2 or 3, sometimes 4 cases, and they've been spreading them out throughout the day. It's making a longer court session day, but it's trying to minimize the amount of traffic that sometimes we've seen congregating the hallways here in the building. So I believe the supervisor will discuss that with the town board tomorrow, and we may hear more. Timing, not really sure, but given the increase in the number of COVID cases. I believe I understood there were 6 new ones yesterday in our county. We did take we just about depleted our supply of face masks, which are used by all of our departments, as well as people who are in the building. So I did authorize the replacement. We ordered another pallet of masks just to be prepared. If we don't have to use them, that would be the best news ever. They get used anyway regularly by a couple of our departments, so they don't go to waste. And then finally, in responding to the discovery that the polystyrene foam floats that are being used under boat docks in Mirror Lake, some are disintegrating and they're floating all over the lake surface and they're breaking down into relatively small particles, but it still is a noticeable issue. There have been 2 properties so far that have been identified. Those owners have been each notified, and I believe so far, one at least has already removed their dock. In the event that they put it back, it will go back with encapsulated material that will not allow for the polystyrene to break up as it is. In connection with that, the Mirror Lake Watershed Association developed a letter to Mirror Lake waterfront property owners with the help of upstairs. There's some 94 such properties in Mirror Lake, and they have asked the town and the village to participate with the association, just sending a letter asking these properties, advising the property owners of what's been discovered and encouraging them to consider removing the existing exposed polystyrene floats and replacing an encapsulated float instead. That letter would be signed by Bill Billerman as chair of the association, myself as mayor, chair, supervisor. So I wanted you to be aware of those steps. I'm also aware of the fact that we use some of the same material on the public beach dock. Expect maybe over the winter that we'll take a look at what might be necessary and what the cost might be to take steps to improve that. At the same time, while that was being discussed, I was hearing that there was at least interest in, it's a growing conversation of possibly redesigning those docks a little bit. It was pointed out that the docks that are out there were put out there and designed basically when we had a 10-foot diving board at the end, which some of us remember. It hasn't been there in a number of years, but there may be some interest in redesign. I'm looking at that as maybe a project that we could submit an application for some of that 2% that tax money. It's out there for community projects. So we'll see where that goes. Certainly think we want to leave it back. Any other commissioner reports?
One from Brad on the sidewalks around Mirror Lake. There were supposed to be signs put up by now telling the general public that there wouldn't be as much salt put down this year due to their newness and needing to cure. The signs came in and they were the incorrect signs. He's ordered the new ones. They're supposed to be here and go up this week. Also, Kimball says in the electric department that the new LED street lights will be going up this week on both Saranac Avenue and Hillcrest, and that the line problem they had on Main Street, that they're working on a plan to solve those problems in the future. That's about all I've got.
Anybody else? Does anyone else in attendance wish to address the board or question the board? Janet, any?
I had a question.
Okay, go ahead, Liz.
I just was wondering, in light of the news from the Saranac Lake Village, about their positive staff, if any Lake Placid Village staff have tested positive for COVID-19 recently.
The answer is, as of today, we have one employee who is confirmed as positive. That employee is at home and is believed beginning to recover. We have had a situation in another department where a couple of our staff members were in the presence of a person who did test positive. Those two individuals this morning were sent home and advised to secure the test. And based on those results, we'll determine what next steps are. We work very, very closely with our county health department. Linda Beers is doing an absolutely fantastic job, and I believe she's working 7 days a week to try to keep up with this. But yes, there are situations that we're watching, and that is one of the reasons why I was in discussions today with the supervisor about the possibility of reinstating controlled access to the town hall. I think that's probably going to be necessary in the coming weeks.
Okay, so there's one positive and 2 people who are, who have potentially been exposed.
Yes.
Okay.
And as you're seeing and as we're seeing, this situation is it changes by the hour, day to day.
Right.
Anything
So
else?
will those employees being out impact village operations at all?
At this point in time, the answer is no, but we're very aware of the fact that that situation can turn on a dime, so to speak. And we may very well reinstate split shifts as we did last spring, which would mean that we would have half the department on the job and half the department in reserve at home, and then we would flip from week to week. We haven't taken that step yet, but clearly that would be the best option that would be available, and that was the recommended option. Our experience last spring.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Anything else? If not, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting. Scott, is there a second?
Second.
Peter, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for this evening. It was a light agenda.
Thank you all.